views expressed on this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its management, or other advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.
Moms, are you ready to become enlightened, empowered, and stress-free? Well, get ready because you are about to tune into vibrant, powerful moms helping everyday women create an extraordinary life with Debbie Pokornik. Each week, Debbie discusses topics to help you become self-aware, inspired, and on track to create the life you crave. It's time to stop settling and start thriving. And it all begins now on Transformation Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Vibrant Powerful Mom Show. I'm your host, Debbie Pokornik, and one of my goals is to help you stand firmly in your power, no matter what challenges life throws your way. Today, I have with me a wonderful guest named Cynthia Fortledge. I first met Cynthia a few years ago at a get-together for an organization that both my husband and Cynthia belong to. I want to tell you more about my connection with her, but before I do, let me introduce her formally to you. Ms. Fortledge has been an international award-winning information technology executive for the past 30 years with a privately owned Winnipeg company. She's a parent of 2 young adults. She's a board member with various organizations, including Rainbow Resource Centre, where she sits as president of the board, and Women's March Canada, where she's part of the national board. Ms. Fortledge came to terms in 2016 with a 41-year denial of her true gender identity. In 2018, she started her own consultancy and coaching business for women and LGBT plus identifying persons in business. So as you can see, she is a professional woman. She's on the go doing lots of things. And one of the things that really stood out for me was that she happened to announce her transition at the same time that my son came out to us. And so for me, that forever linked us in this beautiful place of connection and understanding and trust, not to mention that she's been a wonderful resource and inspiration to both my husband and I. So in September, Cynthia and I were once again both at this yearly get-together for the same group. And as I sat there listening to her share what all she was up to and how things were changing for her, I was so struck by what a beautiful person she is in every way. And I realized that, she's the perfect example of someone who faces challenges on a regular basis and yet still manages to live a vibrant and powerful life. And of course, I just knew I had to have her on the show and have her share at least a few of her secrets with us. So Cynthia, welcome to the Vibrant Powerful Mom Show.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it and glad to be here.
Oh, love to have you here. So now you sent me this great little description for today's show, and I want to start by just reading that out, okay? Mm-hmm. The world is full of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about transgender people. Beyond the hype in the news and politics today are real human beings trying to live vibrant, powerful lives. Hear firsthand from one woman how she does this every day. Now, I think that's very well written, and it really makes me feel like we need to spend some time dealing with this FUD. I love that term too. So how about we start off right away with the elephant in the room? What would you like to say about life as a transgender person that you believe would be helpful for others to hear?
Thanks, Debbie. I think really the biggest thing for folks to think about is very often I hear the word choice. When did you choose to do this? How could you choose to do this, etc.? It's not a choice. And I'm not going to go into justify it with medical science and studies and so forth, but I would ask your listeners to think about, would anybody truly make a choice if they realize that their marriage, their family, their friends, finances, and even their career were at risk? No, you wouldn't. Mm-hmm. It's not a choice to do that. So when I hear conversations around bathroom issues and so forth, trust me, the only reason I'm in a bathroom is because I need to pee. So I did not choose to do this for any other purpose than it is my life calling to follow my journey in life. We'll talk about acceptance without understanding, which is my motto by which I live that. But quite simply, it's not a choice. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, if people perceive that, well, you could have chosen not to, I would draw your attention that even as a 50-plus-year-old woman, we won't get into specifics, that at the end of the day, over 50% of people in my age that do not face their life journey of being transgender attempt or are successful at suicide. And I don't consider death a choice either. So for me, it was go forward and follow this path that was in front of me or not. And so again, it's not a choice. It was simply, I had to move forward just as I had every other day.
Right.
You get up and you move forward. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
You know, I love that you were able to share that so eloquently, because I know for my son, we watched him go from being quite anxious, quite reserved, always very confident. It always baffled me that he could be so confident and yet at the same time so pulled back and reserved and detached in so many ways from life. And then when he came out and started to transition, it was just like literally like watching a flower blossom. It was so beautiful to see. And that to me just beautifully showed this is not about him, thinking, okay, I'm going to act out here and this is what I'm going to do.
Yes. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming into his own. Love it. So sorry, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, go ahead. I was just chuckling.
Okay. So let's dig a bit into this idea of the world wanting to understand before it will accept. Because I think this is a problem that goes way beyond acceptance of the LGBT plus community. I think it really applies to all of us. So what's your take on it?
Thanks, Debbie. I mean, you're absolutely right. Through the whole process, and again, as you outlined from my formal biography at the beginning, I have gone through a lot of management and leadership training, and you learn lots of tools and techniques in dealing with people and things to be successful. And I found that I had to apply all of those to myself, and one of them really was reflecting on, why was there such this disconnect from the world who really seemed to understand before they would accept who I was. And it struck me that, think about our young children. Whenever, they're between 2 and 4, and why? That's all you hear is why? Whenever we go through school, we're taught to ask why in order to get through. And of course, that takes us through post-secondary, et cetera. We get into the working world and we ask why. And in the nature of my industry, as well as your husband's, we ask why in order to understand the root cause of a problem. Right. And why is really a question that struck me that we ask to gain understanding. And so therefore, our mantra is, I need to understand before I accept. And all I was simply saying was, I'm a human being. Can you not just accept that I'm a human being first and foremost? And I'm following my life's journey, just as you are a human being following your life's journey. So when you apply it, you're absolutely right. It is bigger than the LGBT plus community. The fact is it's more than the gender identity or sexual orientation, but it includes other aspects of diversity, such as religious diversity, ethnic, cultural, indigenous status, and also to our youth, right? I mean, I always, as a parent, when my children were, thankfully they're young adults, so it's like, yay, they made it, they're successful.
And you survived.
And I survived, but they're successful. And it was realizing, that my ex and I, we always shared this very humorous comment of, now we know why some animals eat their young. and that's because going through my second puberty through transition, I absolutely learned the impact of hormones on your body again. And, it's really what's happening to our youth as they're going through and adapting to being their person is they need acceptance without understanding as well. And so I think we need to think of it beyond just as people, as human beings, but understand that it covers so many aspects of really things that people would have us see as different between us, but it's really what's common between us. That's what we're accepting is our commonality, not our differences.
Right. And I think you had mentioned to me before, I think this is such an important point. You were talking about faith and what is faith?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of a thought as I was thinking about it. So I was raised an Irish Protestant, born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. And when I moved to Canada and grew up, my ex, when we married, we were married for 32 years, I became a Roman Catholic. And it really struck me that, faith is very important, especially for those that have very strong religious beliefs. But I know that in all of my time being of Catholic faith, nobody could ever explain to me with understanding the Holy Trinity of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. It is such an immense kind of thought. We just have to accept it. And just as our faith teaches us to accept without understanding that is beyond us, that's all I'm simply saying. Just like faith, have acceptance without understanding when it comes to other human beings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is unconditional love, isn't it? Loving someone just because they are, just because they're born.
Yeah, exactly. It is. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's something that a lot of parents struggle with. I've done a show, or I have a show maybe even coming up yet, on teenagers. That's what I'm trying to say, teenagers. And I think the teen years are where we often stop loving unconditionally and we start putting conditions on it. Right. And we struggle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, nice.
Yep.
So what do you do? Like when you run into people who are still wearing those blinders, they treat you rudely. And I know you shared some really heart-wrenching stories with me before. And so we don't need to go into those and what you do in the moment.
Right.
What I'm more interested in is what do you do afterwards in order to carry on and to be that vibrant, powerful woman rather than just curl up in a ball and feel sorry for yourself? Because I think it would be very tempting to do that. So what do you do?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you it's very easy to want to curl up in a ball whenever life throws you a challenge. And certainly, again, back to the point that not a choice. The simple fact is it doesn't reduce the fact that it's a challenge. And I knew that it would be a challenge. So what do? Well, part of it is I have a couple of philosophies that I live life by. One of them is I've always been kind of a glass half full kind of gal. So for me, it was always, no, let's look on the upside. Yes, there can be something to lament about or to fester upon. But it's really, well, what can we take away? And certainly part of my power, my pride in myself is part of that. And so that's something that we focus on to deal with. But I also think that, understanding, and I think a perfect example is my father. We had a very estranged relationship up until shortly before he passed away, which is days, just so your listeners have context.
Okay.
And you know what it is? It's understand that somebody that you're dealing with doesn't have necessarily the appropriate skills to know how to deal with you or understand what is or isn't sensitive. And for me to acknowledge that, and I can give them that gift of helping them understand what being appropriate or being sensitive is. A simple example that comes up, of course, is genitalia. If you wouldn't ask another person, your neighbor, about their genitalia, why would you ask me? It's a very simple kind of concept, but
it is.
But people
an
think
important
just
one.
Yes. But just because you're transgender, people kind of forget that. So it's very the second one is that, people, well, I don't know. Like, how do you, well, you simply ask polite, appropriate questions. And I have no problem with any question that comes from a place that is not of malice, that is truly wanting to learn and is open to learning, including perhaps the use of the language in which they deal with it. But I think the real secret to your question is, how do I deal with myself? And, the magic answer is self-care. But before your listeners think that's just massages and so forth, it's not. Because what I found was self-care is doing the really deep mental work. I found that in the moments of my extreme sadness, when my parents passed and I was grieving, that's the moments I dig deep. That is when I am most available emotionally to understand myself, to go into the dark depths of our mind that we generally don't want to, and not be afraid of exploring, who am I? I might be over 50, but you're still asking the question, who am I? And through that work, I know who I am. I know where I'm coming from. And it gives me those moments that I can look at and be proud of myself as I move through. And that allows me to step above and live in that vibrant, powerful way.
Nice.
Thanks.
There was so much in there.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. We're gonna pick out some more of it, I think, as we go. But so the three that I caught though right away that fit right in with living that vibrant, powerful life, even when the world is throwing curveball after curveball at you. And I think we can agree that you're getting more blatant curveballs, from people who just don't understand and aren't willing to accept before understanding, right?
Right. Absolutely.
But the three I heard there is focusing on the cup half full. I mean, we decide what's good or bad. I talk about that a lot on my show. And rather than focusing on everything as being bad, looking at what is the good in this, because there's probably a negative good. Love that. I also heard conversation, having open, honest conversation that allows people to ask questions and feeling comfortable being able to tell them that, yeah, this is okay, this is not. And that's the same for all of us. Anytime somebody wants to talk to a person, there's boundaries. We have to be able to set those. So I love that. And then the third one, of course, being the self-care, loving yourself, taking care of yourself. And I like that you actually took the self-care and said, yeah, I'm not just talking about those things you do to pamper yourself. I'm talking about going deep and looking at, what do I really need? Who am I? What is important to me? Why is this important to me?
Yes.
Love it. Those are really great tips.
Great summary. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. That's my job. So you shared a personal story with me about alphabet soup.
Yeah.
And I found it really powerful. So could you share some of that story now?
Sure. So, the alphabet soup, for your listeners that aren't familiar with, that's when people refer to the LBGT plus, and sometimes you hear it with a lot more letters. For those that are not part of the community, I just simply say, let's make it easy. We are a community of gender and sexually diverse people. That's it. It's no more complicated. But if you are part of the community, the letters matter. And it's a matter of understanding who we are, finding ourselves, but it's not where we live. It's just to understand the starting point of our identity. And it is from there that we step off after finding our letter and alienate. I went through a couple of different letters in that alphabet soup till I found where I fit in as a transgender woman. And now that I know that's where it is, I'm just becoming the woman that I've always been. So I don't live there, but I needed that identity to know where to go, how to get medical help, how to get psychological services, how to get appropriate medical services along the way, and to find my peer support groups that fit with that. So that's where the alphabet soup is really important for everybody to align to. It's not where we live, it's where we start.
Nice. That is so exactly what I was talking about on this show I was on, Skills Not Pills. And it was all about the idea of once you get the diagnosis. Now, in this case, we're not talking about a diagnosis, but when you are, once you get the diagnosis, take the label and let it help guide you to find information, to
Mhm.
know, who your people are, all that.
Right.
And then throw the label away. Peel it
Right.
off, throw it away because it's no longer going to help you. It's just going to hold you back and hurt you if you try to live within the bounds of that label. So this to me is the same idea. You're not that letter. That letter just helped you to find a spot and to say, okay, so now these would be my peers. These are
Right.
people that I can connect with more readily than others, let's say.
Correct. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So I do want to talk a little bit more about what you touched on in a couple questions back
Hmm.
when you were talking about talking to your dad, because
Right.
I think that there is a lot of confusion and even fear from people that really want to be accepting and open,
Yeah.
but they're just not sure how to have those conversations. What you said there about genitalia was perfect because that just tells us all. If you wouldn't ask other people, why would you ask me?
Right. Yep.
But there's even other things like wanting to ask how the transition is going or
Right.
how it's going with your kids or whatever. And so I'm wondering if you could give us maybe just a little bit of advice on that.
Absolutely. And, really the key is I talked about, to really ask non offensive conversations, ask the questions in a polite manner, ask them, where you're coming from. And again, if you're not sure, then you simply ask the question and
Hmm.
go, you know, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if this is appropriate. Please tell me if it is, but I'm wondering, about, how are your kids? And I go, well, that's perfectly appropriate to ask. This is how things are. Again, if you're not sure, just simply asking. It's just the same as starting the conversation with, hi, my name is Cynthia. Oh, sorry, what are your pronouns, Cynthia? It's she, her, and hers. So, please don't use a male reference because I use female references. Oh, great. Thanks for telling me. Now I know how to refer to you. Now we can actually have a great dialogue. So, really understanding that it is coming from that place of open, honest communication. And, again, just the politeness is just so important because you're talking about what could be very sensitive topics and not everybody is comfortable talking about the same things. So it's
Hmm.
not, oh, well, I asked one person this, I can ask you. No, you need to ask each person, is that okay to have that conversation?
Yes, I love that you said that.
Yeah.
I was at a party this summer and I had someone ask me. This happens actually a lot. It's not
Yep.
just one time thing, but I had someone say, "So can I ask you, because of your son, I'm wondering." How do I refer to my friend's child who's transitioned when I'm talking about a story from when they were young?
Right.
What gender, like what pronoun do I
Hmm.
use? And I go, I can't answer for all trans people.
Yeah.
you know, but a great way to do it is to ask them.
Yes.
How do you, or you can ask their parents, but it's even better. You can say to them, so if I'm sharing a story about you when you were young, should I use the pronouns you like to use now? Or whatever.
Exactly.
It's just polite chatter,
Yep.
right? And saying, okay, is that what you would like? And
Hmm.
it's trying to understand people because often people will say things, even for me, they'll say something and I'll think, that's not really something I would have liked you to share about me.
Yeah.
you know, but that's again setting boundaries and having conversations. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah, beautiful. So really, in the end, it's still exactly the same. It's human communication, being kind, being thoughtful, asking, are you okay with me asking this? Or I hope that didn't offend you what I just said,
Right.
because I didn't mean to. I'm so curious,
Yep.
right? And then you can help them out with that.
Exactly. Yep.
So we only have a few minutes left, and I really would
Mm.
like to give you a bit of time to tell us a bit about your business ventures, what you're up to now, and how
Sure.
you're sharing the life skills that you've acquired while reframing your life.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah. So what I've learned is how to redefine myself completely from A to Z, along with all of the other skills that I've had over the last 30 years. And what I have found is I started informally through these conversations with folks. They started asking life skill career questions. And so this past summer, I initiated Cynthia Fortledge Inc., which is a life coaching operation that I've kicked off. And really what I'm doing is focusing on helping women who are in business, as well as LBGT T plus persons who are in business, who are looking to figure out how to get ahead in their career. And with that always comes questions about life, but it's really trying to apply everything I've learned in helping them to understand and reflect back on their own life to move forward.
Nice.
Yeah.
And even that piece of normalizing, because it's not all easy, smooth sailing.
No,
Right.
and it doesn't matter whether you're part of the LBGT community or not. Life is just not a simple journey, and we all can use some help.
So true. Cynthia, can you tell people a little bit about your Facebook page that you have?
Absolutely. It is where Cynthia Fortledge Inc. lives on Facebook, and you go to facebook.com, all one word, acceptance without understanding is where you can find me.
Awesome. Okay, that will be up on the blog that is attached to this show, as well as on the Transformation Talk radio page that's attached to Cynthia's show. So you'll be able to get it there if you didn't have time to write it down, but I hope you will go and check it out. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for coming on the show and sharing such valuable information with us. This has been so eye-opening, and I think it's a much-needed conversation that we need to have more and more of so that people can, take some of the armor off, put down some of their arrows, and start just enjoying each other. Because we're all great people.
Absolutely. Thank you for the
Yeah.
opportunity, Debbie.
Oh, you are so welcome. With much respect for you and the journey you are on, this is Debbie Pokornik and her guest, Cynthia Fortledge, wishing you a vibrant and powerful day.
You've been listening to Vibrant, Powerful Moms with host Debbie Pokornik. If you've enjoyed this show, please give us a shout out and leave us a positive review. To find out more about Debbie and her sisterhood of Vibrant, Powerful Moms, visit empoweringenergy.com. That's empowering with letters NRG.com.